I wasn't supposed to be there. That's the thing nobody tells you about the moments that change you. You stumble into them sideways, half awake, holding a lukewarm coffee and arguing with yourself about whether the tube was worth it. I'd taken the day off work. Personal day. The kind you take when you don't actually need one, but you're starting to forget what your own face looks like in daylight. I figured I'd walk the mall, maybe loop past Buckingham Palace the way I did when I first moved to London, and everything still felt like a postcard. It was early. Not early, but that quiet Thursday morning early where the city hasn't fully committed to itself yet. The sky was doing that thing it does in October. White at the edges, gray in the middle, like a piece of paper someone breathed on. A few pigeons. A jogger. 3 Japanese tourists photographing the gates from 3 different angles simultaneously, with the kind of coordination that honestly deserved its own medal. I stood across the road with my coffee and just watched. The way you do when you're trying to feel something and you're not quite sure what. The guards were in position. That's the first thing you notice, or the first thing you stop noticing after about 30 seconds because they become part of the architecture. Black tunics. Bearskins. The absolute refusal to be human in any direction. I always found that slightly unnerving, not in a dark way. More in the way a stopped clock is unnerving. Everything around it moves. It doesn't. There were 2 of them at the main gate. Maybe 4 total further down the perimeter. I couldn't be certain. And then there was the convoy. 3 cars. Black. Not the showy kind of black. Not the kind that shows up to a premiere. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't want to be looked at, which of course made every single person on that pavement look immediately. I didn't know who was inside. You never do. The cars slowed near the east entrance. Not the main ceremonial gate, the other one. The one tourists photograph less because it's less grand, more functional. The one that means, this is business. I finished my coffee, tossed the cup, took 2 steps closer, not really deciding to, just drifting. A woman beside me, maybe 50, American accent, sensible raincoat, leaned toward her husband and said, "Something's happening." He said, "Something's always happening here, Deb." She was right, though. The lead car stopped. The back car stopped. The middle one, the one that mattered, I understood this without knowing why, idled for a moment longer than it should have. Like whoever was inside needed a second. Like they were deciding something, or had just decided something. And the weight of it had to be redistributed before a door could open. A guard moved. Not the ceremonial kind. This one was different. No bearskin, dark uniform, close cut, the kind of posture that has never once in its life been casual. He walked to the middle car with his hands loose at his sides, which is, I would later understand, how people walk when they are very much not relaxed. The door opened from the inside. She stepped out. I didn't recognize her immediately. I'm not proud of that. She was older than her photographs made her seem, or maybe it was the morning light, or maybe photographs just lie in the direction of mercy. She was dressed well. She always dressed well. That was one of the things people either respected or resented about her, depending on which side of the particular argument they sat on. Camilla. Not the Duchess. Not the Queen Consort. Just a woman stepping out of a car on a gray Thursday morning, and something in the line of her jaw was wrong. Wrong like a painting that's hung slightly off-center. You don't clock it consciously. Your eye does it for you. The guard said something to her. She turned her head toward him. And then, I didn't have an angle on it. Nobody did, really, which is why what came next spread the way it did through the crowd, person to person, like a cold working its way through a classroom. You catch it before you know you're sick. There was a sound. Not a scream. Not raised voices. A single sharp sound, the kind your palm makes against something solid. And then, the guard stepped back, not far, maybe 6 inches, but, in his world, in that posture, in those shoes on that pavement, 6 inches was a continent. He'd been struck. She had struck him. I saw his head turn, and I saw the 2 ceremonial guards near the gate go absolutely, utterly, terrifyingly still in a way that was different from their usual stillness. Their usual stillness is performance. This was something older. Did she just, the American woman said. Her husband said nothing this time. The guard stood back in his 6-inch exile for 3 full seconds. Which is, if you've never counted 3 seconds in dead silence while 30 tourists hold their breath around you, a very long time. Then, he spoke into the radio clipped at his shoulder. Quiet. Professional. The tone of a man reporting a temperature reading. And everything that happened after that happened fast. 2 more guards appeared from somewhere I couldn't place. That's the thing about royal security. You don't see them until they want you to, and when they want you to, It's already too late to pretend the situation is ordinary. These two were the non-ceremonial kind as well. The kind whose job title probably has a polite word in it that means something uncomfortable. They came from the east side of the gate, and they positioned themselves at angles to her, not surrounding her, not yet, but making a shape. The kind of shape that has a purpose. Camilla had gone very still. I've thought about that stillness since. It was not the stillness of guilt. It wasn't even the stillness of shock, not exactly. It was the stillness of someone who has spent decades performing composure and is now performing it under conditions it was never designed for. Like watching a stage set hold up in a real storm. You find yourself almost admiring the engineering even as the walls bow. She said something. I couldn't hear it. The crowd had done that instinctive thing crowds do. No one had stepped back, but everyone had somehow gotten quieter, which in London is the truest possible signal that something genuinely strange is unfolding. The first guard, the one she'd struck, was still on his radio. His expression had not changed. That was the part one kept coming back to. He had been hit, across the face or the jaw. I couldn't be fully certain from my angle, and his face had the exact same arrangement of features it would have had if she'd asked him the time. Training. Years of it. The kind that doesn't stop being training because you decide to. A fourth figure emerged from inside the gate. Older. A different collar on his uniform, some marking that meant seniority, though I couldn't tell you which rank. He walked without urgency. And because he walked without urgency, everyone watching understood that urgency was precisely what he was containing. He spoke to the first guard briefly. Then, he turned to her. I watched her face when he turned to her. There, just for a blink, the way lightning shows you the whole garden, and then takes it back. There was something. Not fear exactly. Calculation, maybe. The mental arithmetic of someone who has spent a lifetime knowing exactly which room she was and wasn't welcome in, and was now trying to work out which category this particular pavement fell into. Whatever she calculated, it didn't help. He spoke to her for perhaps 40 seconds. She responded twice. Short responses, the kind you give when you know the conversation isn't a negotiation. Then, he stepped to the side, and one of the flanking guards stepped forward. A hand at her elbow. Light. Correct. The kind of touch that doesn't ask. She went with him. Not willingly. I want to be precise about this, but not struggling. There is a particular way people move when they understand that moving differently would only worsen their position, and she moved that way. Controlled. Contained. The years showing in her spine. They walked her back toward one of the cars. Not the middle one she'd arrived in. The one at the back. The crowd hadn't moved. Nobody was filming, or everyone was filming. I honestly couldn't tell you. I wasn't watching anyone else. I was watching her walk across that pavement in heels that were too good for a Thursday morning that had gone this wrong. The door closed. The car didn't move immediately. It sat there for 2 full minutes, engine running, and I counted because I needed to do something with my hands, and I'd already thrown the coffee cup away. Inside Buckingham Palace, I could only imagine, and I did, standing there on the pavement, I absolutely imagined. What was happening on the phones, the secure lines, the quiet rooms where decisions about things like this get made. How many people were being woken up? How many carefully worded sentences were being constructed in real time? King William. That was the thought that finally landed on me, slow and heavy like a sandbag. She had struck, or done whatever she had done, in proximity to the palace on a morning when his schedule was, almost certainly, internal. Meetings. The kind of king's work that nobody writes songs about, budget reviews, and correspondence, and the grinding daily labor of representing something larger than yourself. I thought about what it must be like to receive that radio call. To be handed, mid-sentence probably, mid-thought, the information that the situation had escalated in a direction that protocol, and there is always, in that world, a protocol, had to address. The thing about protocol is that it doesn't negotiate. It doesn't feel bad about you. It doesn't weigh your history or your titles or the decades you spent trying to earn a place in a story that was never quite written for you. Protocol is a machine, and the machine had been switched on, and now it was running. A woman beside me, not the American, a different woman, younger, with a press lanyard around her neck that she was very carefully not reaching for, exhaled slowly. Well, she said, to nobody in particular. Yeah, I thought. Well, the car's indicator came on. Left turn. The kind of destination a left turn from that gate suggests on a morning like this. Not home. The car pulled away. London kept moving. That's the thing that undoes you. You witness something. Something that scratches at the surface of everything you thought you understood about how this country works, about ceremony and power and the polished machinery of royal continuance. And then you look up, and the pigeons are still there. The jogger is looping back. The 3 Japanese tourists have moved 15 feet to the left for a better angle on the gate. The gate from which a car has just taken a woman to somewhere none of us on the pavement had a name for. I stood there another 10 minutes. Maybe 15. My feet had made the decision that my brain was still processing. The ceremonial guards had resumed their stillness. The first guard, the one who'd been struck, was back in position. You would not know, looking at him, that anything had occurred. His face was the palace wall. His posture was 200 years of institution. Whatever his jaw felt like right now, it was entirely his own business. I've tried, since, to figure out what exactly I witnessed. The reports that came out, and they did come, quietly, the way these things come, through reliable adjacent sources and carefully unattributed briefings, spoke of a dispute. The word dispute did a lot of work in those sentences. It covered, apparently, whatever had been said in the car on the way over, whatever had been said in the moments before the door opened, whatever had precipitated the sound that made 30 strangers hold their breath on a Thursday morning. The word altercation appeared once, then didn't appear again. What I know, what I saw with my own unfancy eyes from 20 meters on a gray October pavement, is this: a woman arrived in a car, something broke open between her and a guard, and then a system older and less sentimental than any individual within it made a decision and acted on that decision without drama and without hesitation. The guard reported. The senior officer came. The protocol engaged. The car left. No raised voices. No press conference. No statement that day or the day after. Just a left turn, and the city absorbing it the way the Thames absorbs rain. I walked home through St. James's Park because I needed the trees. The ducks on the lake looked aggressively unconcerned, which I found comforting. A child dropped an entire sandwich off the bridge and screamed with a grief disproportionate and entirely correct for the loss. I thought about William. Not King William, the institution, just William, a man in his 50s who had spent his whole life navigating a particular kind of love that came packaged with history and expectation and the weight of everything his mother never got to finish. A man who had, over the years, learned which silences to keep and which rooms to leave, and who had apparently, this morning, been handed news that one more thing had broken in a way that required the machinery to respond. I don't know what he felt. I'm not arrogant enough to guess. But I thought about what it costs to be inside a system that doesn't stop for you, that loves you, in its way, in the way institutions love the people who carry them, but will also, without apology, act against the people closest to you if acting is what the protocol demands. The park smelled like wet grass and bus exhaust. A woman walked past me talking into her phone, saying something about dinner reservations, her voice carrying the specific brightness of someone who had no idea what Thursday had just filed in the ledger of days worth remembering. I didn't stop her. What would I have said? I walked home, and I made tea, and I sat at my kitchen table with the mug in both hands, and I thought about the guard's face. The way it hadn't moved. The way he'd stepped back 6 inches, and then stood there in those 6 inches, and done the job exactly as the job required to be done, regardless of who was in front of him, regardless of the rings on her fingers or the history written into her name. There is something almost brutal about that kind of integrity. And something, if I'm honest, standing in my kitchen in the ordinary afternoon light of a city that had already moved on, something that felt, against my better instincts, like the closest thing to fairness I'd seen all year. The tea went cold. I didn't notice until the mug was empty, which is how you know you've been somewhere else. And wherever I'd been, standing on that pavement, watching that car take its quiet left turn into whatever came next, I understood that I would carry it. The way you carry things that don't explain themselves, that don't need to, that land in your chest and stay there, not as answers, but as the particular weight of a question you were present enough to witness. She'd struck him. The guards had come. The city had not stopped. And somewhere, in a room I would never see, a king sat with whatever version of grief looks like when it has already been shaped by a lifetime of learning not to show it in the places where showing it would cost something. Some thrones, I think, are heavier empty than full. And some mornings arrive like that car did, quiet, purposeful, impossible to wave through, and leave you standing on the pavement after, holding nothing changed.